"You can't win this war," they said. Humanity's response shocked the galaxy. The galaxy was silent when the Valari Dominion arrived in Earth's orbit. Their ships were so huge that they blocked the stars, casting shadows over the planet below. People stood in the streets looking up at the burning sky, unable to believe what they were seeing. For centuries, the Valari had conquered world after world. Every race that tried to resist had been crushed in days. No one had ever won against them. To many, it felt like the end of Earth had finally come. A single voice carried across the world when the Valari broadcast their ultimatum. It was deep, cold, and filled with absolute confidence. "You cannot win this war," the alien commander declared. "Surrender your planet and your people. Join the Dominion or be erased from existence." The message repeated again and again across television screens, radios, and even hacked communication satellites. There was no escape from it. Humanity had been warned. Panic spread quickly. Families packed what they could and ran for underground shelters. Governments argued in secret meetings, their voices trembling with fear. Some leaders begged for surrender, believing that survival was better than hopeless resistance. Others clenched their fists and refused to kneel. And yet, despite all the fear, there was something inside humanity that refused to break. Even in the darkest hour, people whispered the same words: "We will fight." In a hidden bunker beneath the mountains, a council of generals and scientists gathered. Screens glowed with maps of the Earth, dotted with red marks where the Valari had already begun landing drones and scout ships. The air was tense, every breath heavy with dread. Admiral Hayes, an old man with a scar across his face, stood up and spoke. His voice was steady, filled with iron. "They think we are weak. They think we are unprepared. They have no idea what we've been building in the dark." Around him, heads lifted. Secret projects long hidden from the public were now their only hope. For decades, humanity had studied alien ruins. Fragments of lost technology found in the solar system. Weapons had been built in silence. Fleets had been trained in secret, waiting for a day like this. The Valari believed Earth was just another helpless world. They were wrong. The first strike came at dawn. Valari warships fired beams of white fire that scorched entire city blocks. Skyscrapers crumbled like sand, and the sky turned red with flames. The aliens expected the humans to scream, to surrender, to fall on their knees like every other species before them. Instead, missiles shot from hidden silos, streaking through the atmosphere and striking the enemy fleet. For the first time in centuries, Valari ships burned in battle. Citizens around the world watched the news in disbelief. An alien battleship had fallen. Not by accident, not by sabotage, but by human weapons. It was a small victory, but it shook the galaxy. Across distant systems, hidden observers whispered, "How is this possible? How can humans fight them?" The Valari commander snarled in anger, his cold eyes glowing on every broadcast. "Primitive fools," he hissed. "You dare strike against the Dominion? You will be destroyed." Yet beneath his calm mask, a flicker of doubt appeared. No prey had ever bitten back so hard. On Earth, resistance grew stronger. Civilians volunteered to fight. Hackers disrupted alien drones. Engineers rushed to repair defense grids. Humanity's spirit burned brighter than ever. The more the Valari attacked, the more united humanity became. Fear was still there, yes, but now it was mixed with defiance. In space, the secret fleet finally rose. Ships long hidden in dark orbit powered up their engines. Their hulls gleamed with strange technology. Human designs fused with alien fragments. Railguns the size of towers rotated into position, preparing for war. It was humanity's last card, their final gamble. Admiral Hayes watched from the command deck of the largest warship, the Resolute. His hands tightened on the railing as Earth's ships turned to face the approaching alien armada. "They told us we cannot win," he said softly. "Then let us show them how wrong they are." As the Valari fleet drew closer, the people of Earth held their breath. The ultimatum had been clear: surrender or be destroyed. But humanity had chosen a third path: fight until the last breath. The first great battle of the war was about to begin, and for the first time in history, the galaxy would learn that humans were not prey. They were predators. The Valari expected a swift victory. For centuries, their fleets had burned through resistance with ease. On every world they conquered, the pattern was the same: one strike, mass surrender, and total control. But Earth did not follow the pattern. Earth broke the rules. When the first Valari battleship fell to human missiles, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Hidden watchers from other alien empires, long silent under Valari rule, recorded every moment. Across distant stars, voices whispered in disbelief. Humanity had drawn blood from the unstoppable. The Valari commander was furious. His orders thundered through the fleet. Crush the humans, erase their courage, show them despair. Entire squadrons descended on Earth, firing beams that scorched the land and shattered mountains. The air above cities boiled. The oceans churned with explosions, and still, the humans did not surrender. Deep underground, command centers stayed alive with constant noise. Generals barked orders, scientists tracked enemy movements, soldiers prepared for the next strike. It was chaos, but it was not collapse. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. They had studied the stars, learned from history, and they knew what it meant to fight with their backs against the wall. In secret labs, engineers activated weapons the world had never seen. Railguns hidden inside mountains fired slugs of metal faster than sound, tearing through Valari shields like paper. Drone swarms, built in forgotten warehouses, rose into the skies and targeted enemy fighters with precision. Even the civilian population joined the war in their own way. Farmers converted tractors into armored carriers. Miners strapped explosives to asteroids and launched them into orbit. And hackers from dark basements hijacked alien signals to turn Valari drones against their masters. The Valari were not fighting a military. They were fighting an entire species. Admiral Hayes stood on the deck of the Resolute, his eyes fixed on the battle screens. His officers shouted updates, their voices shaking but their hands steady. Enemy squadron advancing from the west. Shields at 70%. Multiple cities under attack. Hold position, Hayes ordered. His voice was calm, unshaken. Let them come closer. When the Valari ships entered range, Earth's fleet moved like a trap springing shut. Hidden cruisers decloaked from the darkness of space, firing coordinated volleys. Valari vessels erupted in bursts of fire, their formations broken. The aliens reeled in shock. No one had ever fought them with such precision, such ferocity. Still, the battle was brutal. Human ships were torn apart, their wrecks falling like burning meteors. Entire cities were lost, their lights vanishing in the night. Every victory came at a terrible price, but humanity did not stop. For every ship destroyed, 2 more launched into the fight. For every fallen soldier, 100 civilians rose in anger. The Valari began to realize something terrifying. Humans were not afraid of death. They were afraid of losing freedom, and that made them dangerous. The Dominion's commanders argued among themselves. Some demanded the destruction of Earth with planetary weapons. Others warned that such a move might spark rebellion in the galaxy, now that humans had shown resistance was possible. The Valari had ruled through fear, but now that fear was breaking. If one world could fight back, why not others? In the streets of shattered cities, survivors gathered around damaged screens, watching live footage of the battles. They saw their ships striking back, their missiles burning through alien steel. For the first time in days, they cheered. They felt pride. They felt hope. And hope was something the Valari had never faced before. As the hours turned into days, the war spread across the solar system. Skirmishes erupted on the moons of Jupiter, where human outposts became fortresses. Mining colonies on Mars turned their drills into weapons, sending shockwaves into alien ground forces. Every corner of human space became a battlefield, and every battlefield became a story of defiance. One night, Admiral Hayes stood alone in the war room, staring at a map filled with red markers. He knew the cost of this war. Millions had already died, cities were in ruins. But as he looked at the map, he also saw green markers, places where humans still stood strong, places the Valari could not crush. He spoke softly, more to himself than to anyone else. They told us we cannot win this war, but they do not understand humanity. We do not fight to win. We fight because we must, and that makes us unstoppable. Above Earth, the Valari flagship loomed, its weapons glowing with deadly light. The commander prepared for the next strike, determined to break the humans once and for all. Yet for the first time in centuries, he felt something cold and unwelcome. Doubt. The humans had survived the first wave. They had struck back harder than expected, and somewhere deep inside, the Valari commander wondered if the impossible had already begun. That perhaps, just perhaps, this was the war his dominion could not win. The war had already dragged on longer than the Valari expected. They had promised a swift victory, but Earth still burned and still fought back. Every day the Dominion sent more ships, and every day humans found new ways to resist. Across the galaxy, whispers grew louder. No one had ever forced the Valari into a prolonged fight. Something was different here. Something dangerous. On the surface of Earth, cities lay in ruins. Entire skylines had collapsed, and the land bore scars of alien fire. But instead of surrender, survivors rose from the ashes. Families who had lost everything joined the resistance. They dug tunnels, built traps, and passed messages in the shadows. Ordinary people turned themselves into soldiers not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. For humanity, survival itself was the battlefield. Admiral Hayes watched reports streaming in. Losses were heavy. Ships destroyed. Entire towns gone. Yet the spirit of his people only grew stronger. "They are trying to break us," he said to his officers, his voice low but steady. "But every time they strike, we become sharper, harder. They do not understand what they have awakened." In orbit, the Valari pressed harder, deploying massive dreadnoughts armed with weapons that had shattered empires. Their beams cut through space, their fighters filled the skies, and their commanders laughed at the thought of human defeat. But then something happened they had never seen before. Humans struck at their supply lines. Small fleets of human ships, cobbled together from old freighters and experimental warcraft, launched raids deep into Valari-controlled zones. They didn't fight like other species. They didn't hold ground or defend territory. Instead, they slipped behind enemy lines, attacked fuel convoys, destroyed communication hubs, and then vanished into the void. These tactics baffled the Valari. To them, war was simple: overwhelm the enemy with power. But humans fought with unpredictability, with cunning, and with a willingness to sacrifice everything. A young commander named Ree led one of these raids. Her fleet of barely a dozen ships ambushed a Valari convoy near the asteroid belt. The Valari scoffed at the attack, certain it was suicide. But within minutes, their transports were burning, and their escorts were in disarray. Ree's ships darted like shadows, striking fast and then disappearing into asteroid fields. By the time Valari reinforcements arrived, the humans were gone. News of these victories spread across Earth like fire in dry grass. People crowded around broken radios, cheering when they heard about another Valari ship destroyed. It wasn't just about the damage. It was about the message. The Dominion could bleed. The impossible had become possible. Inside the Valari flagship, the High Commander's temper burned hotter with each defeat. His claws slammed against the control table as he snarled at his officers. "They are vermin! Crush them, burn their world until nothing remains but ash." But even his own soldiers began to whisper. Fear had always kept the Dominion strong, but now, for the first time, cracks appeared. What if humanity was different? What if they truly could not be broken? Meanwhile, the humans had their own secret plan. Hidden deep beneath the oceans, scientists worked on a weapon unlike anything ever used before. It was dangerous, unstable, and untested, but time was running out and Earth needed an edge. They called it Project Tempest, a weapon designed to disrupt alien shields and tear open even the strongest armor. Hayes knew it was a gamble, but he also knew gambles were the only chance humanity had left. The turning point came one night above the skies of Mars. The Valari launched a massive offensive, determined to seize the colonies and use them as staging grounds. Thousands of their ships descended. The human fleet was smaller, weaker, and outnumbered, but they stood in formation anyway. Hayes gave a single order: hold the line. The battle was chaos. Valari fire tore through human cruisers, reducing them to burning wrecks. Fighters clashed in swarms, explosions lighting up the red planet below. For every human ship destroyed, another moved forward to take its place. They fought not for victory, but for survival. Then, as the Valari flagship moved in for the kill, Project Tempest was unleashed. A blinding surge of energy ripped through space, shorting Valari shields and leaving their ships exposed. Human weapons tore into them with brutal force. One by one, Valari dreadnoughts erupted in explosions, fire spilling across the void. For the first time in living memory, a Valari fleet retreated. They fled the battle, leaving wreckage behind. Humanity had not just survived, they had pushed back. On Earth, when the news spread, people poured into the streets, cheering even amid the ruins. For a single moment, fear vanished. Hope roared like a fire, unstoppable. Children painted stars on walls. Soldiers raised flags over rubble, and families held each other tight. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they were not prey. They were something far more dangerous. Across alien worlds far from Earth, suppressed races began to whisper louder. If humans could resist, perhaps they could too. Perhaps the Valari were not gods after all. The seeds of rebellion began to stir. Admiral Hayes stood in silence as the stars glowed outside his warship. He knew the war was far from over. The Valari would come back with everything they had. But now he had seen it with his own eyes. Humanity could fight. Humanity could win. And that truth was more powerful than any weapon. The Valari had suffered something they had never known before: retreat. The loss above Mars was not just a defeat of ships, it was a wound to their pride. Across the galaxy, fear began to shift into something dangerous: doubt. The Dominion had ruled for centuries because no one believed they could lose. Now, for the first time, that belief was broken. The Valari High Council demanded revenge. Every fleet was called, every weapon prepared. They would not allow humanity to become a symbol of rebellion. The order was clear: crush Earth completely. Leave nothing standing. Soon the largest armada the galaxy had ever seen emerged from the void. Thousands of ships darkened the stars, from massive dreadnoughts to swarms of fighters. Their shadows covered Earth like an eclipse. Even the bravest soldiers felt fear as the enemy blotted out the heavens. It was not just a battle. It was a storm meant to erase a species. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Resolute, staring at the endless swarm of red markers glowing on the tactical screen. Around him, officers whispered prayers under their breath. He did not speak for a long moment. Then finally he gave his order. All fleets, hold the line. Tonight we show them what humanity truly is. The human fleet was small in comparison, barely a fraction of the Valari Armada. Their ships were scarred, patched together after countless battles. Their weapons were limited, their crews exhausted. But every face showed the same expression: determination. They were not fighting for conquest. They were fighting for survival, for their families, for their world. And that gave them strength no calculation could measure. The battle began with a roar of light. Valari weapons fired in waves, beams of destruction cutting through space. Human ships weaved through the onslaught, firing missiles and railgun slugs in return. Explosions painted the night above Earth brilliant and deadly. It was chaos, fire, and death, yet the humans did not break. Hayes's voice cut through the storm, steady and commanding. Sector 3, lure them into the asteroid belt. Sector 5, hold fire until they breach the minefield. Sector 2, stand ready for tempest. Every order was a gamble, every maneuver designed to buy another minute of survival. But those minutes mattered. Those minutes gave humanity hope. Then came the turning move. Hayes ordered his fleet into a retreat, drawing the Valari deeper into the asteroid field. The aliens pursued eagerly, certain they had victory within reach. But as their ships pressed forward, the asteroids came alive. Hidden charges exploded, sending rocks spinning into enemy formations. Entire Valari squadrons were ripped apart as the field itself turned into a weapon. The humans struck from the shadows, darting between debris and wreckage, firing with precision. One Valari cruiser after another fell. Still, the Armada pushed forward, their sheer numbers overwhelming. Humanity was bleeding ships faster than they could replace them. The Resolute shook under constant fire, alarms screaming across the bridge. Hayes gripped the railing, his jaw set. Activate Tempest, he ordered. A surge of energy pulsed outward, invisible to the eye but deadly to alien technology. Valari shields collapsed in waves, their ships suddenly exposed. Human guns fired relentlessly, tearing holes in the enemy lines. Explosions rippled across the fleet, shockwaves echoing through space. For a brief moment, the impossible seemed real. Humanity was winning, but the Valari were not so easily broken. Their flagship, a monstrous vessel larger than any city, moved into position. Its weapons glowed with destructive power, capable of ending the battle in a single strike. All eyes turned to it. If that ship fired, Earth would be finished. Hayes knew what had to be done. All units, he commanded, focus fire on the flagship. No retreat, no hesitation. The sky burned as every human ship unleashed its arsenal. Missiles, lasers, railgun slugs, everything hurled at the colossal target. The flagship's shields blazed, its armor holding, but the constant assault began to crack it open. The Valari commander inside snarled in disbelief. This was not how battles were supposed to go. This was not how prey behaved. Then from the heart of the fleet, a human battleship already ablaze made its final move. Its captain, mortally wounded, steered the dying vessel straight into the Valari flagship. With one last cry, the ship rammed into its target, detonating in a burst brighter than the sun. The explosion tore through the alien behemoth. Its engines ruptured, its weapons shattered, and in a final scream of fire, the Valari flagship collapsed into wreckage. Silence fell across the battlefield for a moment, broken only by static and the distant cries of astonished soldiers. The unthinkable had happened. The Valari armada had lost its heart. Their fleet faltered, their formations broke, and one by one they began to retreat. Humanity had not just survived. They had struck down the mightiest vessel in the galaxy. On Earth, people poured into the ruined streets, staring up at the sky as burning wrecks fell like stars. Cheers rose even amid tears. They had seen death, destruction, and despair. But they had also seen victory. Humanity had changed the stars. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge, weary but unbroken. He whispered to himself, though the words were carried to every ear across the fleet. We were told we could not win, and yet here we stand. Let the galaxy remember this day. Let them remember humanity. And so in the darkest night of war, light was born. When the Valari flagship fell, the galaxy itself seemed to go silent. For centuries, the Dominion had stood unchallenged, crushing all resistance with iron claws. Their power was legendary, their rule absolute. But now, burning wreckage drifted above Earth, proof that even giants could bleed. The impossible had happened, and nothing in the stars would ever be the same again. On Earth, people stared at the sky in awe. Children pointed to the glowing trails of falling debris, whispering that the stars themselves were celebrating. Families who had spent days hiding in bunkers emerged into the ruined streets, holding hands and lifting their eyes to the heavens. For the first time since the war began, there was no fear in their faces, only pride, only hope. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Resolute, the tired hum of damaged engines filling the silence. Around him, his crew sat in exhaustion, their uniforms torn, their eyes hollow from sleepless nights. But in those eyes burned a fire that no alien could extinguish. They said, "We cannot win," Hayes whispered more to himself than to the galaxy. "But we have shown them who we are." Across the Dominion, the shockwave spread. Alien worlds that had lived in fear for generations now looked to Earth with new eyes. On mining colonies deep in the outer rim, enslaved workers stopped their labor, murmuring to one another. On distant planets where rebellion had always been a dream crushed before it began, whispers grew louder. If humanity could resist, if humanity could break the unbreakable, then perhaps they could too. In the Valari council chambers, rage and disbelief filled the air. Commanders argued, claws slamming against the cold metal floor. Some demanded to return with even greater force and erase Earth forever. Others, more cautious, warned that humanity had already done what no one else had achieved. They had planted doubt. That doubt was poison, and it was spreading faster than any weapon. Meanwhile, humanity prepared for what was next. Engineers scrambled to repair ships. Scientists worked to stabilize the unstable weapon known as Tempest, and soldiers buried their dead with solemn honor. Cities lay in ruins, millions were gone, and the scars of war would last for generations. But in the ashes, humanity found something stronger than despair. They had found unity. The galaxy watched when Earth sent its first broadcast after the Great Battle. The image of Admiral Hayes appeared on countless screens, his face lined with age and war, his voice steady like stone. "We did not seek this war," he said. "We never wished for bloodshed. But when they told us to surrender, when they said survival was impossible, we chose to fight, and we will continue to fight, not for conquest, not for domination, but for freedom. To any who suffer under the Dominion's chains, hear us, humanity stands with you. The stars belong to all of us." Those words echoed far beyond Earth. On worlds across the galaxy, beings of countless shapes and voices repeated the message. Freedom, resistance, hope. The Dominion's greatest weapon had always been fear, but now fear was breaking apart. The Valari commander who once declared Earth's doom sat in silence aboard a damaged cruiser. His once proud fleet scattered, his voice no longer carried the same weight. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never known before: uncertainty. The humans had changed everything. Back on Earth, amid ruins still smoking from battle, children played beside the wreckage of fallen drones. Civilians painted walls with bright colors, drawing stars and ships flying free. Soldiers patrolled the streets not as conquerors, but as protectors of what they had saved. The people had lost much, but what they had gained was greater. The knowledge that they were not helpless, that they were not alone in the universe, and that they were capable of defying even the greatest empire. Hayes walked alone through the halls of his warship, listening to the faint hum of systems barely holding together. He thought of the lives lost, the sacrifices made, the burning wrecks drifting in orbit. Yet when he looked out the window at Earth below, scarred but still alive, he felt something powerful in his chest. Pride. The war was not over. He knew the Valari would return. He knew darker battles still waited in the void. But now everything had changed. The Dominion was no longer untouchable. Humanity had carved its name into the stars, written in fire and sacrifice. As the Resolute drifted past the wreckage of the Valari flagship, Hayes spoke quietly, though his words carried like a vow. We are humanity. We are not prey, and we will never bow. In the endless expanse of the galaxy, those words traveled farther than any beam of light, carried on voices, memories, and whispers. On distant worlds, beings raised their heads in courage. In the cold halls of the Dominion, leaders trembled in silence. And in the heart of humanity, a truth burned bright. They had shocked the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same.